Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. So, do you have some of those friends who tell you their plans for getting pregnant? That, we're going to start trying in 2 months and 6 months and 3 months. And right on schedule, they have an announcement that they're pregnant. And you wonder, how did that happen? How did you know it was going to be so easy? How did you know it was going to happen like that? I have friends that are like that. And still, to this day, it boggles my mind that for some couples, it just takes a bottle of wine or just an evening or an afternoon off or something, and bam, they're pregnant. But I do know that there are many more couples where it takes so much more than that. And I know that for many of you, it's a much more laborious, way less sexy process. From needing OPKs to medications to ultrasounds to surgeries, for so many of us, it's just not that simple. And so today I want to talk to you about the top 10 things that you should buy, have, or do to help you get pregnant. Because there's so much information out there about what you need to do, what you need to try, what you need to get. And I don't want you to be wasting your time and your money for things that are unnecessary. So we're going to go through these top 10 things that you should buy, have, or do that are proven to help increase your chances of getting pregnant. So we're going to jump in with number 1, which is the OPK. Now, if you don't know what that is, OPK stands for Ovulation Predictor Kit. And they tell you when to expect ovulation so you can time your intercourse appropriately to increase your chances. And, it may sound surprising to say this as number 1, but I can't tell you how often I hear from women that they don't even know what that is. They've never heard of it. They didn't know. I'll be honest with you. Before I started fertility treatment, I had no idea what that was either. I didn't know. It's a little stick that looks like a pregnancy test, which I realize is kind of torture to have to start peeing on things before you are actually pregnant. But you can get them at any drugstore, and it basically checks your hormone levels through your urine to tell you up to about 6 hours before you're going to ovulate that it's time. So it's really, really awesome. Now, I'll tell you here that I prefer the digital ones over the non-digital ones. And the digital ones, you can tell, are the ones that will give you a smiley face when you're ovulating or you're about to ovulate, and you get, I can't remember if it's a frowny face or just nothing, but it's something just equally sad when you're not ovulating and you've taken the test too soon, basically. I used to take these tests all the time when I was starting our first cycle for fertility treatment, and I never got a smiley face. I didn't know until then that I don't ovulate, actually. But it was really sad. It's like, where's my smiley face? Come on, I want my smiley face. I'll also share here that I prefer OPKs over temping. Now, if you're not familiar with temping means, it's basically checking your basal body temperature and checking your cervical mucus to know when your body's ready to ovulate. Now, here's why. The reason really is because checking it on your own, number 1, it's actually really great because you can get to know your body. You get to check and see what your body's like throughout the month. You understand how your temperature fluctuates. You understand how your cervical mucus fluctuates. So it's actually really good for getting to know your body. But it's a bit more cumbersome to do, and it's not as accurate as with a digital thermometer like Clearblue, which is, not thermometer, as digital OPK like Clearblue, which is really easy to find anywhere, because you're really going to get a much more accurate answer But again, if you're going to do both, I think that's great because then you'll get to know your body. But if you're going to choose one or the other, I think it's definitely worth spending money on getting digital OPKs. Okay, so the second thing that you can do when you're ready to start trying to conceive, when you're had that conversation with your partner, you're like, yeah, I think it's time to try. I think it's a good time. I think I'm ready. Are you ready? You have that whole conversation, right? Have a conversation then with your obstetrician. This is something that a lot of couples forget to do, which is to talk to your OB before you get pregnant. And now, if you've had a history of a high-risk pregnancy, preterm delivery, before a stillbirth before, you've had repeat pregnancy losses, then you want to schedule this appointment with a maternal fetal medicine specialist or a high-risk OB instead of your regular OB. But you want to talk to one or both of them before you start trying. And when you schedule that appointment, tell the receptionist at the front who's taking that appointment that you want to schedule a preconception visit with your OB. A lot of times women get nervous and you try to slip in questions every time you go in for your yearly exam or when you have to go in for something, and you just try to slip those questions in. Since you're here, do you mind if I ask you a couple things? It's not a great idea to do that because you don't get enough time with your OB for them to answer those questions fully. So if they know you're coming in with all these questions, then they're going to set up and leave enough time for you to ask them all and to get all your answers. Now, for that appointment, make sure you bring your partner with you because you both can get a sense of what is needed for both of you to do to increase your chances of getting pregnant. It's a really amazing, very proactive way of approaching your fertility because you don't want to waste time. You don't want to waste money and energy and blood, sweat, and tears. And it's really, really important that you get ahead of it by talking to your OB first. Get a sense of what's going on. Questions that you can ask include, when should I get off of birth control if you are on birth control? When should I expect my period to return? If it doesn't return by then, when should I call you? So you're really getting the lay of the land and getting a sense of what to expect and what to do if it doesn't go as expected. Now, this is also a really great appointment where you can review any pain that you have in your pelvic region or any pain that's associated with your cycles and bring all that information with you to that appointment. Your cycle lengths prior to being on birth control, or if you're not on birth control, then what your cycle lengths are for the last 3 to 6 months. Is there anything off about that? You can ask your doctor, have them review that with you so you can see visually together what your body's telling you about your cycles. Now, this is also a great opportunity to talk to your doctor about lifestyle changes. Now, I will say here, though, that most physicians are not experts in lifestyle changes. They may have some information, but they're not experts at this. So they'll give you some starting points, but that's exactly why I do what I do, because I work with obstetricians and MFMs to provide this information in a more specialized manner. So you can find somebody like that to support you through these lifestyle changes. But things like, when do I stop drinking alcohol? Do both of you have to stop drinking alcohol? What about exercise and supplements? And when do I start those? Because if you're trying to get pregnant, things like prenatal vitamins and increasing your folate intake, those things start even before you plan on trying for the first time, right? So you want to get a plan for that. Now, again, I want to just reiterate, if you've had a high-risk pregnancy, if you have a history of recurrent pregnancy loss, you have a history of preterm delivery, this appointment should be made with a high-risk obstetrician. Even if you don't have one, ask your OB to refer you to one because you want to talk to a specialist about these questions and not your general OB. Okay, so the third thing that you want to do, this number 3 on the list of top 10 things you should buy, have, or do. This one you need to do to help you get pregnant. You have to sleep. Seriously, you have to sleep. You have to sleep well, you have to sleep comfortably, and you have to sleep regularly. For women, sleep has an extremely powerful influence on your hormones. And those hormones control your cycle. They regulate ovulation. And if you don't sleep enough, or if you have poor quality of sleep, you have much higher levels of stress hormones coursing throughout your body, which are known to affect your cycles. And we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But if you're noticing that you are having long cycles, really short cycles, really irregular cycles, if you're doing the OPKs or you're tracking your cycles by checking your mucus and you're not quite sure if you're ovulating or not, look at your sleep and see if you are sleeping enough. For men who suffer from obstructive sleep apnea, research has shown they have reduced sperm count, which decreases your chances of conception if there's not as many there, right? So this affects both of you, men and women. But I will say here that it is not the idea that more is better. Okay, we're not just saying just sleep more, because on the one hand, there's research that shows that women who sleep 9 to 11 hours a night, which, oh my God, that sounds amazing though, doesn't it? But women who sleep 9 to 11 hours a night actually had lower pregnancy rates than women who slept somewhere between 7 and 8 hours a night. And definitely that was more than women who slept about 4 to 6 hours per night. So really the sweet spot seems to be about 7 to 8 hours a night. Now, of course, that depends on each person. Some people do need more sleep than others, but we're talking about a full night's sleep. And it's not just the number of hours that you're sleeping, but it's also the quality of your sleep. So waking up frequently during the night, finding yourself awake, having trouble falling back asleep, that disrupts your normal sleep cycle, which you need to keep those stress hormones low and to have enough time at night to restore, for your body to restore itself and to really just have that restorative sleep that's important for healthy fertility cycles, for healthy hormone levels for both men and women. So look at your sleep and see if you're sleeping enough. Great ways to increase your sleep quality is to, number one, make sure your room is really dark and make sure that it's a temperature that's comfortable for you. Now, I like my room really warm. I can't sleep when it's cold, but many people prefer their rooms to be cool. So look at all of that. I mean, it sounds really obvious, right? It sounds really easy, but these are the things that we forget to do when we're caught up in the big picture of why am I not getting pregnant yet? So stop and look at that and test it out and see what might be going on. And then make sure that when you do go to sleep, it's at the same time every night. Make sure that you've wound down enough before you go to bed so your head isn't buzzing with to-do lists that you've forgotten to write down during the day or things like that. Okay, so we've gone over the first 3 of this top 10 list. We've got OPKs, which I think are better than testing and monitoring yourself, but are great to do together too. Digital OPKs are my favorite. Talk to your OB or your MFM before you are ready to start trying to make sure you've got your bases covered, and make sure that you're sleeping enough and getting good quality sleep. Okay, so we can't get too far down the list before we talk about this, which is stop stressing. Okay, I say that in jest because I know that it is not that easy to do, and that is not at all the sole intention of this section here. But basically, you do have to manage your stress effectively. And we just talked about sleep. Sleep is one way to manage your stress. Getting enough sleep lowers your stress hormones. So let's stop here for a second and let me clarify what I mean by managing your stress. It's not just feeling calm, feeling at peace, feeling happy. That's great, and that's part of it, but that's not all of it. Managing your stress means lowering the stress response that you're having in your body physiologically. Now, here's the thing. Sources of stress are not just emotional. Physical pain, lack of sleep, illness, all of these things contribute to higher levels of stress hormones in your body, and those stress hormones screw up your cycle. Now, I want to say this again because it's really easy to just brush this off and say, well, I'm not stressed, I'm happy. And that's not what we're talking about here. You can be happy, you can be calm, and still be experiencing a physiological stress response in your body. And that shows up as increase in cortisol, which is one of the major stress hormones, increase in insulin levels. So if you have diabetes, you might see that your numbers are going up for some reason, or they're not responding to the medication or exercise or diet like they used to. And there's too much estrogen in your body. This is called estrogen dominance, which is not good for conceiving or staying pregnant. There are so many fertility complications that are associated with estrogen dominance, like having menstrual cramps, PMS, fibroids, really heavy bleeding, endometriosis, ovarian cysts, recurrent miscarriages, PCOS, or not even ovulating. This is serious, guys. You've got to keep your stress response in your body low. And that's not to say that doing that is going to cure everything. I mean, it would be great. I have seen that happen with some women, that when they manage their stress, all of a sudden they get pregnant. Again, that's not saying they take a vacation and it's all better. They do the work to do a full lifestyle change to lower the stress response in their body. And it can work. It's really profound. It really makes a huge difference. Now, I know what you're thinking. How in the world am I supposed to not stress when I'm not getting pregnant? It all goes back to this one concept that I hit over and over and over, no matter what we're talking about, is you have to focus on your body. You have to listen to what's happening and what it's telling you to do. Because these symptoms that you may be having are likely related to there being too many stress hormones in your body. It's likely related to that physiological stress response that is going through the roof, and your body's trying to get your attention, going, pay attention to me. Something's not right. Something's off. So when you think about stress, think about it that way. It's not don't stress, but it's lower your physiological stress response, because it can that response can come from a variety of factors, right? It's not just emotional. And there's so much you can do about it, but here are 3 places you can start. Number 1 is you can meditate by saying Om. And the way you do that is you take a big deep breath in, and you instead of exhaling, you exhale out an Om like this. Om. And you go as long as you can until you exhale all of that air. It is really powerful at regulating your breathing and your heart rate, which can lower that physiological stress response. The second thing is don't exercise if you're exhausted. See, and this is what I mean again, right? You think exercise is really good for your stress, so I'm just going to do it. It's not if you're exhausted, because if you're tired, your body's already ramping up a stress response to keep you going. If you exercise on top of that, that stress response gets higher. So if you're tired, listen to your body and slow down. Take a night off. Find a way to rest, recover, so you'll have the energy to exercise tomorrow. And the third thing is to up your vitamin C intake. Vitamin C is one of the vitamins that is used up really fast by your adrenal glands, which are these little glands that sit on top of your kidneys that produce stress hormones like cortisol. And to keep up with that stress hormone production, they use up a lot of vitamin C. And so loading up on vitamin C can lessen that load on your adrenals. It can help slow down the stress response, and it's great for building up your immunity, which takes a hit when you're going through a stress response. So again, remember that it's not just stop stressing. It's help your body calm that stress response down. All right, number 5 on this list of 10 things to do, have, or buy to help you get pregnant is to look into alternative medicine. And there's a lot of conspiracy, that's not the right word. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of doubt about the effectiveness of them. And I'll share with you that for me, this was something that I started looking into slowly, because part of me was like, well, is this really going to work? Like, how do we know? This seems kind of out there. But things like acupuncture, acupressure, Chinese herbs, visiting a chiropractor really do actually have a positive effect, or can have a positive effect on your fertility. And they're great options in the alternative medicine world that you can consider if you want to increase your chances of getting pregnant. If you're doing everything that you can and you're trying to look for more ideas, these are some great options. Acupuncture in particular has a great reputation for helping. Acupuncture, there's a lot of research about it. Acupuncture is shown to increase blood flow to your uterus, which can thicken the lining that you have in there every month, which is really important for implantation. It can strengthen your immune system, which is super important just in general, but especially if you're trying to get pregnant. Acupuncture also improves ovarian function so that it stimulates blood flow to your ovaries to help you release better quality eggs, which is great also for fertility. It helps just regulate hormones in general and kind of regulate those cycles again. And it's not just for women. Acupuncture also improves sperm count, sperm motility, and sperm morphology, which are all things that need to be optimal to help you get pregnant. So it's really, really powerful. And there's a lot of research that shows that it works, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows it works. I have so many friends and clients actually who have tried acupuncture when they're going through fertility treatment and swear by it. So every cycle that they've tried, they make sure to schedule an appointment with their acupuncturist. I will say here that it can get expensive, though not all insurance companies will cover acupuncture or any of these alternative medicine options. So do your homework and make sure you find someone who is reputable, has a lot of clients who are coming for what you're coming for, and is well versed in treating your specific underlying issue that's related to your fertility. So make sure they know what they're doing, especially for why you're going there. I will also add, though, that I tried acupuncture myself when I was going through fertility treatment, and it made my symptoms so bad, and it made them so much worse than when I was not going there. So that's not to say that it doesn't work. What I want to add here is to make sure that you're listening to your body. So if you're trying something new, or if you're trying something traditional with Western medicine, it doesn't matter. Listen to your body. And even if all the research in the world is saying that it works, if it's not working for you, speak up or stop. And that's perfectly okay. Okay, so number 6, we are just going through this here. Number 6 is the importance of exercise. And what I want to tell you about exercise is I don't want you to exercise too much. That's kind of surprising, right? You weren't expecting me to say that probably. But there is research that shows that women who exercise to the point of exhaustion were more than 2 times as likely to have fertility problems than those who tried less strenuous activities. This was research that was published just a few years ago. That is because of the stress response that we talked about not too long ago, that it just becomes too much on your body. It takes such a toll on your body, and your body's not up for it. So yes, I know you know exercise is important, but do you know how far to go? That's what we need to talk about. Don't exercise to the point of being so exhausted that you just fall asleep at night, or you can feel it that your body is tired, because your body's smart. It knows that if there are conditions that are not optimal for conceiving or for sustaining a pregnancy, and it's going to mess up your cycles. Now, I know growing up, I'd hear all the time that women who train for the Olympics or women who are like super insane athletes, they lost their periods, right? And their period stopped. And yes, that happens. That's there. But we're starting to find that it's not just those extremes where your cycle is affected. It's even before that. So you don't want to train for marathons. You don't want to do decathlons or triathlons or anything when you're trying to get pregnant. But you also don't want to exercise to the point of complete exhaustion either. Even if that's running 5 miles, if that's exhausting you, cut back. Because research has shown that moderate intensity training, like 3 hours of jogging per week or so, improves the fertility for men and women. It can help you regulate your cycles if you're a woman, and for men, it has been shown to help sperm count, sperm size, and sperm motility. So it's good for both of you, but be smart about it. So try yoga, rock climbing, moderate intensity hikes. Those are great options. Going for jogs a few times a week are great. Just be smart and slow down if you are getting exhausted, because it could be working against you. All right, so we have gone through a few so far of the top 10 things you should buy, have, or do to help you get pregnant. We've talked about buying OPKs, ovulation predictor kits. We've talked about scheduling an appointment with your OB or MFM when you're ready to start trying again, and making sure that you're sleeping not too much, but not too little, just right. We talked about managing your stress so that you're calming that physiological stress response in your body. Looking into alternative medicine and being smart about how much you exercise and making sure you're not going overboard with it, but making sure that you're still active too. All right. Number 7 is to take care of the relationship with your partner. I had a client a few months back. I'm going to call her Sophie. And one of the sessions, she talked about how she'd been trying to get pregnant with her husband. It had been like 7-8 months. This was not how it worked with her first pregnancy, where she got pregnant with her daughter. That was just we're going to look at each other, bam, I'm pregnant, super simple. So she expected it to be the same. And it was getting really hard. And one of the things that was extremely difficult for her that she shared with me was not even the fact that she wasn't getting pregnant, but the fact that she was losing the connection between her and her husband. She hated that. Now, this is a couple who is super great about going out, spending time with each other, even though they've got a little one at home. This is just a huge priority for them. They're kind of this ideal couple for how well they prioritize their relationship. But all of a sudden, because she was doing timed intercourse, she was tracking her cycles, it had just become really clinical. And I remember her telling me during that session that I don't feel connected to him anymore. I feel like every time we have sex, it's just to see if we can have a baby. There's no us anymore. And I hate that. And I know that that's an experience that a lot of couples have, whether you're doing timed intercourse with Clomid or you're doing IVF or something in between. Fertility issues can really take a toll on your relationship. And so it's really important that you prioritize staying close and connected and finding that intimacy in the middle of this new world that you're thrown into. So schedule date nights that have nothing to do with your fertility journey. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. Play kind of a role as if you are a couple that's not going through it. It's not even on your mind. And that can be hard to do, I understand. But dress up, go to a restaurant you've always wanted to, or a restaurant that has really positive memories associated with it, and really recreate that connection to get you both out of that world, even if it's for a couple of hours. The other thing that I highly recommend my clients do is to set up different locations for where you have intercourse, so that, for example, your bed is reserved only for those nights that you just want to be connected and close, and it's just about the intimacy. But for those nights or those days or whenever you need to have intercourse because you're ovulating and you're cycling, find a different place in the house for that. And that way there's this contextual reminder that, hey, right now we're just being close and connected, and this is about our relationship and our love for each other. And it doesn't bleed into the clinical side of trying to get pregnant. The other thing that I recommend is to talk to each other. Both of you are going through completely different experiences of the same experience, right? You have different coping strategies. You have different ways of looking at it and understanding it. And that can affect your emotional intimacy too. In the case of Sophie and her husband, these two are, seriously, they were just such a pleasure to work with, because especially at the beginning when we first started working together, the communication was amazing. It was so ideal. It was almost like, can I take you to some of my workshops to show what communication looks like? Because you guys are awesome at it. But when this started happening, it started breaking down. When they started facing fertility issues, the communication started breaking down because her husband didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to have that conversation, and he didn't want to deal with it. And to her, it was very hurtful because it felt like he didn't care. And she felt like she was in it completely alone. But when we started digging into why that was happening, it was actually because it was overwhelming for him, because he felt so helpless and he didn't know what to do. And so his only thought was to just back off from it. And so this miscommunication also erodes that emotional intimacy. So talk about it. Find a time to discuss and take turns sharing your experience so you can understand where you both are coming from. All right, we've just got a couple more. Number 8 of the things that you should buy, do, or have to help you get pregnant is to have a healthy diet as part of your lifestyle. Diet and what you eat plays a tremendous role in the health of your reproductive system for both men and women. And it's really kind of astonishing how closely they're tied together, because the food that you eat impacts your hormonal levels, which affects your cycle, which affects egg quality, sperm quality, and your ability to get and stay pregnant. But I want to add here, before I tell you any details about this, that there is no perfect diet. You're going to research all of this. You're going to look at online. I'm sure either you've already done it or you're going to do it. And you're going to find all these experts saying, this is the way that you get pregnant. This is the fertility diet. This is the PCOS diet. Whatever, the endometriosis diet, whatever you want to call it. You're going to find a lot of contradictory information, and there's just so much of it, that this is what I want you to take away from this point of this episode, which is to be smart in your food choices. You don't have to be perfect in the foods that you choose. It's okay to indulge in some nachos or fries or ice cream or pizza. Eating that once in a while is not going to throw your entire fertility journey off track. It's the depriving of yourself that sets up that chain reaction for bad food choices that makes you feel horrible later and also can actually have a long-term impact on your fertility. But once in a while, it doesn't make a big difference. So listen to your body and trust your body about what foods you can tolerate, what foods you can eat, and when you feel like indulging. Here are a few things that have been shown to help. For men, dark leafy greens and legumes like beans or lentils have been shown to improve sperm quality. And for women, if you're having trouble with irregular periods or your cycles are too long or too short, focus on eating whole grains instead of refined carbs and increase your protein intake because that's been shown to help too. All right, number 9. The 9th thing that you need to do to help you get pregnant is to get a fertility workup for both of you. Now, I'm going to be really honest. This is the one where I get a lot of resistance from my clients and even my friends and family whenever I suggest this, because I hear all the time, well, I don't think it's that bad. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't really have time to see another doctor. And I get it. I totally get it. You don't want it to be that bad. You just want to try and have this hope that next month it'll work and this won't be a big deal and you can move on from this. And it's hard to accept that maybe there's more to it than just trying a few more times. And it's heartbreaking. If you've actually heard episode 2 of Delivering Miracles, we talked a lot about this, about the idea that realizing that you're facing fertility troubles is a form of a loss that you need to grieve because it's very real and it's part of the experience that you do need to focus on. But I want to ask you, to think about all the time that you're wasting trying things that may not even be working by not doing this fertility workup. Every single client that I've seen who's struggled to get pregnant tells me that when they go to their OB after 6 months or 12 months or 18 months and it's not working, I'm not pregnant, what's going on? Their OB puts her on Clomid. That's just the standard protocol. You're not getting pregnant? Try Clomid. That'll help. But Clomid will not help you if you're already ovulating, but the real issue is male factor. Clomid won't help you if your tubes aren't functioning properly. So why waste more time and energy and money on a medication if you don't even know that you need it? So get yourself to a reproductive endocrinologist who's a fertility specialist, and that first appointment will just be a consultation. But make sure you take your medical records and your reproductive history and then get both of you tested. Once you know what you're dealing with, you can make better decisions with the advice from a specialist on how to get pregnant as soon as possible. And to help you out with that, on my website, I have a free downloadable resource called the 10 Questions to Ask Your Doctor to help you get and stay pregnant. Print that out and take it with you. It's fantastic to make sure you get all that information in the shortest amount of time possible. All right, and the last one from the top 10 things that you need to buy, have, or do to help you get pregnant is to make a conscious decision to use fertility treatment. About 6 months, maybe a little bit more, before we decided to do our first round of fertility treatment, my husband and I took a vacation. We were in Costa Rica, which is gorgeous, by the way. If you have not been there, the beaches are, my God, they're so beautiful. And the rainforest, and you just get a little bit of everything. It's so beautiful. One of my favorite vacation places we've been to. And I remember we were walking on the beach, actually, one evening. It was before dinner, so you could see kind of the dusk settling in. The sky was turning colors, but it was still light enough that we could be walking on the beach. And we were talking about, do we really want to do this? And my husband was really surprised at first when I asked him that. He said, well, of course, we want to have kids, don't we? But I didn't want to make that decision with an assumption. Yes, we both wanted to have kids, but I wanted to review that question again now that we knew we would need fertility treatment to have them, because maybe that could have changed one or both of our minds. I know it feels like choices are ripped from you when you have to start thinking about fertility treatment, But I want to remind you that you do have choices. You have to remember that doing fertility treatment or not is always your choice. I know that when you're having to make that choice, you're not choosing from options that you wanted. And I know that comes with a tremendous amount of heartache. But it is your choice, and you should make it from a place of power and not a place of helplessness. I have a friend who got to a place where IUIs, Clomid, none of that was working. And she decided at that point, she did not want to continue with IVF. She didn't want to try it because she tapped into her own body. She tapped into her own wisdom and realized IVF wasn't for her. She didn't want to put her body through that. And so they moved on and they decided to adopt, and now they have a beautiful son at home because that was their choice. Another friend of mine also decided IVF wasn't for her. And in fact, she decided IUIs weren't even for her. And so when Clomid didn't work, she and her husband decided to live a life child-free. That was their choice. That didn't mean that it was an easy one. It doesn't mean that there wasn't heartbreak associated with it. But it was their choice and they got to choose. And so I want you to remember that. You don't have to feel like you're on this roller coaster that somebody's forcing you to be on. You can get off whenever is the right time for you and your partner. Awesome. We went through all 10 of them. So just as a recap, the top 10 things you should buy, have, or do to help you get pregnant. Number 1 is OPKs, which ovulation predictor kits, which you can use in addition to temping and charting on your own. Number 2 is to talk to your OB or MFM when you're ready to try to conceive. Number 3 is to make sure you're sleeping just enough, not too much, not too little. Number 4 is to manage your stress by calming the stress response in your body. Number 5 is to look into alternative medicine like acupuncture, acupressure, visiting a chiropractor. Number 6 is to be smart about how much you're exercising. Don't overdo it. Number 7 is to take care of that relationship with your partner. Make sure you're maintaining intimacy, both physically and emotionally. Number 8 is to have a healthy diet as part of your lifestyle. Number 9 is to get a fertility workup for both of you. And number 10 is to make a conscious decision to use fertility treatment. These are the top 10 things that I believe you need to buy, have, or do to get pregnant. They're not fancy. They're not even expensive. But these are the things that we forget about when we get caught up in that big picture of the family that we want and the children that we want in our lives. And it's important to step back and look at all these simple things that you can do that are super powerful and making sure that you spend the least amount of time and energy and money going forward to get pregnant. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you want to know more or you want to schedule an appointment to talk further, you can visit my website at parijatdeshpande.com. And I'd also love to stay in touch. So follow me on Twitter at Parijat Desh, Parijatdesh. Same handle on Instagram. And I'd love to see you there. There is so much information out there about what to do to improve your fertility, and it can be really confusing and overwhelming. So start with the basics. And from there, you'll know exactly what you need to do, have, or buy to increase your chances. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.